And the child tax credit was fantastic. You go back to our videos, you'll see we give it a ton of credit for that. But as usual, once it ran out, they just dropped it. They never went back to it. So, like, they dropped every progressive proposal instantly. But that Mountain Valley pipeline for Joe Manchin, they brought it back 3, 4 times until they finally put it in a bill for no reason at all. And they put it in because Joe Biden always wanted to do the Mountain Valley pipeline because Joe Biden is Joe Manchin. There was just so gratuitous to put that in the bill. Okay. And then finally, what can he do? Just a short version of it is paid family leaves at 84%. So you go out and you do press conference every single day. You have the largest microphone in the world, and you go, "Hey, 84%. Or do we live in a democracy or don't we? Did you know that 74% of Republicans want paid family leave? Did you know that Estonia has 82 weeks of paid family leave, and we have none, zero? You have a baby, and the woman's supposed to go back into the coal mines, back into the assembly lines. Why are 3/4 of Republicans being ignored by their own politicians? That's because they're corrupt corporate lackeys. You fight, right? But Biden and corporate Democrats don't want to fight. They got no fight in them. I just wish they'd get the hell out of the way. So, like, that's why I formed Rebellion PAC in the first place. Let's get some grassroots funding, rebellionpac.com, okay? And let's go kick these guys' asses and show them how it's actually done.
I'm curious if we can find agreement here or not. I feel like, in my opinion, the best way to pass a more progressive agenda is to get people to vote out Republicans, as many Republicans as possible. That if the Democrats had wider margins in the House or the Senate, we'd see something get done differently. Because it feels like right now the fixation is like, okay, I know we've got very slim majorities, but we need to get rid of some of these Democrats. We need to get some more progressive Democrats in there. I feel like they'd be in the same position. Like you even said, like that forced the vote on like Medicare for all. Like what's the point, right? If you don't have the majorities in Congress to get it done, but you don't agree with that, yeah? Would you?
No, I don't agree with that at all. I guarantee you that that if they had a majority of 4, all of a sudden there would be 4 Democrats that were holding out, not just 2, like Manchin and Sinema. They'd all of a sudden it'd be Coons and Carper as well. If they had a majority of 8, all of a sudden it would be 8 Democrats holding out, because I've covered politics for 25 years and I've seen them do it over and over and over again. And so and in fact, Jayapal just gave away the game. Theoretical head of the Progressive Caucus, or the caucus is theoretically progressive. And she said, well, look, we showed them, we voted no. Now, if they needed the votes, we would have given it to them, but we voted no to show that we disagree. Well, then you just gave away the game, brother, or sister in that case. Okay, so you're just saying, oh, we're just faking it out here. So however many Democratic votes they need to pass these awful bills, we'll always give it to them. But we're going to pretend that we're against this bill because they don't need our votes. That's the kind of gamesmanship that happens. And so, I mean, I guess that's a core disagreement. I don't think that they're golly gee honest people that went to Washington and Mr. Smith just couldn't pull it off. No, they all get massive funding from corporations, corporate donors, PACs, super PACs, and they do exactly as they're told.
But then if that's the case, then why engage with the political system at all? Because now we're back at the square zero. Because now it feels like, yeah, why bother voting or anything if they're all bought and paid for?
No. I don't want people to get discouraged. I'm captain of Team Hope. Okay, so that's why I helped to form Justice Democrats, because my thesis was if you untether people from corporate PAC money, they could actually be honest. And that's why, is it random that AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar were the most visible Democrats when they first got elected? And then Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush. These are all big names you've heard over and over again.
Yeah, but they're winning in plus 40. But they're winning in plus 40 blue districts, right? This is why when the progressives were talking about like, well, we're going to get a progressive in for Manchin, they got slaughtered. That's why people like Nina Turner, even when they fundraise their opponent 2-1, get destroyed. I don't think there's much credit for progressives that are winning in massively blue districts and then attacking the rest of the Democratic Party from the safest seats of the United States.
No. So, Stephen, first of all, when we won a lot of those battles, they were not a given at all. AOC beating Joe Crowley in that primary was one of the biggest upsets in political history, in American history. And so now all of a sudden, they always turn impossible to inevitable, right? It was always going to happen. No, it wasn't. There was massive victories in there, okay? And so, but the reason that they fought loudly and strongly for their voters in the beginning was because they're not taking corporate PAC money. It's the donors that hold them back. Go, oh, don't do class warfare. Whoa, don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do that. That's why the corporate Democrats are always hiding. They're hiding in a cave. So yes, no, there's something you could do. You vote in primaries first, because one, you got to get the corrupt Democrats out because they're just going to vote with the Republicans anyway on economic issues. But number two, you actually need, when they get into office, for them to vote the right way and to be untethered from the corruption. And I'll give you an ironic example. Matt Gaetz, terrible guy, was on the show. We yelled at him. We yelled back and forth, got no love for him, right? But he decided not to take corporate PAC money. And then lo and behold, he was the one Republican that proposed an anti-corruption bill. You got to get them out of the minute you detach them from the donors, they become honest. And they might be honestly awful like Matt Gaetz. They might be honestly wonderful like some of the Justice Democrats. But all of a sudden, you get your democracy back a little bit. And so if you don't get money out of politics, then yes, in the long term, it's hopeless. But we must get money out of politics.
Okay. I mean, like, I feel like the more important thing would be flipping Republican votes to Democrat and then fighting from there rather than trying to flip Dem to blue or Dem. But I think we disagree on that. We could go back and forth on that probably forever.
And by the way, Stephen, I'll just say real quick, that's why I formed Justice Democrats, so that we could have hope, so that we could have uncorrupted Democrats. And that's why I formed Wolfpack at wolf-pack.com. Wolfpack is to get money out of politics. It's now, you want to talk about bipartisan? It is massively bipartisan. Republican voters hate corruption. Democratic voters hate corruption. The politicians love it. The voters hate it. So we brought people together, and now we're fighting for it. And it's passed in like 3 Republican legislatures. It's passed in 20 overall in the states. And it's a resolution to call for a convention to get money out of politics, because the only way you can do it is go above the Supreme Court and get an amendment.
Sure.
And so it's a beautiful movement, and you couldn't do it, but you've got to get past the corrupt politicians.
Sure. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I just, like, it's not like having a lot of progressives in Congress have helped at all, right? Like, the seats that are more important are going to be the ones in the middle anyway, right? Our mansions and our cinemas. Because the reason why those seats are important is because we know that those are the only types of Democrats that can hold those seats, right? If AOC starts saying, well, I'm not voting with the party, anything, screw you guys, I want a more progressive agenda, okay, fine. Eventually she'll get primaried by somebody else, but that's always going to be a Democratic seat. That's always going to be a safe seat. We're not worried about losing it. I think that's why we fight for those seats in the middle so much more. On the Republican side as well, I think that's why those seats in the middle are so much more valuable, why people fight over them so much more. And I feel like that's why we should be trying to expand our majorities rather than purity testing the seats that are the furthest to the left that aren't as valuable anyway.
So, Stephen, in my opinion, there's a fundamental misperception in there in the first place, because Joe Manchin is not the only kind of guy who could win in West Virginia. West Virginia is very populist. They're more populist than they are conservative, right? The reason Manchin wins is because mainstream media gives him tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in free positive coverage. They call him moderate, right? But if you look at his policy positions, literally none of them are moderate. He takes extreme right-wing positions where the country's not. For example, 3/4 of the country wants to raise taxes on the rich. Joe Manchin comes on TV and goes, I'm a moderate. I want to cut taxes on the rich. I'm reasonable, right? That's not the moderate position. That's a tiny extremist minority of the country. And what does corporate media do? Moderate. No, you go in and you run populist and you say to people, goddamn right, we're going to tax the rich. We're going to finally get justice. You're paying your taxes every day. The middle class gets screwed day in and day out. It's time that the rich pay their fair taxes. It's time that you get to spend time with your baby when you deliver. I mean, I can go on and on. You go populist and you could win so many more of those seats rather than the fake moderates that are just corporate
but I mean, the reality is Manchin voted with Biden's agenda 88% of the time, right? Like, he didn't vote for
what, on post offices?
It's better than having a Republican in there. I mean, how many of the Republicans are voting on Biden's agenda 88% of the time, right? That's what I'm saying. If another Democrat can win in West Virginia, then go for it. My understanding is the last time somebody tried to primary Manchin, the guy got like 30% of the vote, I think. I don't even remember the name.
It's actually, I think it was worse than that.
Okay.
So it was
Gotcha.
Paula Jean Swearengin. And she's a good person, but not the greatest candidate.
Sure.
You know, and so, look, do you need someone who's a quality candidate? Yes. But honestly, the hardest thing in the world is to get past the mainstream media, because they'll just smear you to death. And so they do it to all the progressives. And so, but But I would argue, and now we're going to get too far down this rabbit hole, and we have very little time left. But
Hmm.
I'll just say, I think Manchin, in a lot of ways, does more damage than a Republican because he validates the Republican position by saying, "I agree with it, and hence it's bipartisan, hence it's moderate, hence it's the reasonable position." And so I think that does way more damage than just a regular Republican who just seems like an extremist. He makes their extremist positions look good, and that's a world of damage.
Like, do you think that if like if Manchin wasn't in the Senate, do you think that we would have Jackson as a Supreme Court?
So
Like, do you
look,
think, or do you think that
by
that
the
would,
way,
like, because I understand the frustration, because I feel it too. Okay, I'm not a Manchin or a Sinema fan. I don't think Sinema's a Democrat anymore. Isn't she an independent now? I'm not fans of these senators. I agree, and it sucks that it feels like like they have so much sway over the party. But I mean, like, this is how politics always works. If you go to countries, for instance, that have multi-party systems, oftentimes you'll get a majority government formed, and all of a sudden that little party with like 6 seats is calling the shots on the majority government because people need those votes. And I feel like Manchin and Sinema to be the same. But I mean, like, when we look at I don't even know how to pronounce her first name. For Jackson for the Supreme Court, when you look at the major legislation that was passed like almost along party lines in the Senate, Manchin sucks, but a Republican there is like game over. Like, now we can't even complain about how bad our legislation is because there's no legislation to even speak of. We would just have a lame duck president.
Yeah. So first, by the way, that's another one to give credit to Biden on. I think Justice Jackson has been really good so far. She was the lone vote in a critical union case where even Sotomayor and Kagan voted the wrong way, and it was 8-1. And yeah, so Stephen, it's a balancing act. I don't want people to misinterpret my passion for being impractical. No, you got to get things done. And so if you're just doing it for rhetoric or for release or something like that, that's not at all helpful. You have to The outrage should bring a spotlight with it, and then you shine that spotlight on the issue where you have winning ground. That's why I talk about paid family leave being at 84%. It's winning ground for us. If we wanted to fight on that, we can win on that, right? But if you say, hey, listen, we need to get a Supreme Court justice passed, so I need to make X, Y, and Z compromise with Manchin or Sinema. Well, look, in that case, I could live with it. It depends. It depends on what are we compromising on. What's the policy? What's the position? What are we going for? So it's not just a blanket statement of, okay, get rid of them or don't get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that, Destiny.
All right, bye. Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.